It's Dee Dee on the spot.
Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. Before I get to my guest today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, please like and subscribe down below. We greatly appreciate it. We have Chris here from the band Spear Division. They're based out of Indianapolis, Indiana. Chris, how are you doing?
Doing pretty good. How about yourself?
I'm doing great. So why don't you give us all a little backstory about what got you into music, what your influences are, and what you guys are up to currently?
With myself, I basically got into it probably about late middle school. That was when I kind of started getting into like hard rock and heavy metal. Like my first favorite album was Back in Black by AC/DC. So I had was getting into that during high school while also kind of doing a lot of choir and that sort of thing. It's kind of how I developed as a vocalist. Other than that, just kind of honed a lot of that when I was younger. Kind of started doing the band thing late in college. So, and then just for the last couple of years, been working with Spirit Division on a bunch of different stuff, and I have some other side projects that I kind of have in the works.
Oh. How did Spear Division come to be?
Well, it started early 2013. I had basically just had an idea that I wanted to do sort of a bluesy version of metal. Kind of like the first couple Danzig albums, first couple Sabbath albums, also a lot of influence from stuff like Pentagram and Saint Vitus. So I basically talked to, tried a couple of different people out, got a friend of mine from another band on drums, a couple different guitarists, and then just, the lineup kind of cycled from there, and so did the evolution of the band.
So, did you find it difficult kind of blending like bluegrass and metal? I mean, bands have done it before, but those are like two distinctive genres of music. Did you find a struggle starting out kind of blending those two together?
It wasn't really bluegrass. It was like traditional blues music.
Okay, yeah.
Like, they have a lot more in common than people think, I think. But, like, it's a bit more pronounced nowadays because there's a whole lot of new metal and stoner metal out there.
Yeah.
But with us, there was definitely like that first year and a half where I had the idea that I wanted for the band, but it didn't quite translate until I had like the right people and I was a bit more confident in myself as a performer.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a lot of trial and error.
How did you overcome kind of the confidence as a performer? Because starting out, I mean, I know a lot of performers really sometimes struggle with the knowing that, like, kind of you're, especially being a vocalist, knowing that you're kind of the center of attention at shows. How did you overcome that struggle?
It's definitely one of those things where you have to find out what works for you and what doesn't, and a lot of that is just putting yourself out there. Sometimes you gotta find out the hard way, and a lot of it is, sometimes it's people will tell you what's working, what isn't, and sometimes it's a natural intuition sort of thing. Like, I'm a baritone personally, go for lower pitch stuff, but I try to find different ways to push it, and see what ways I can extend my range while also kind of honing what I've already got set up.
So when you go to like a show or whatever, do you have any pre-show traditions that you do? We have a lot of bands on here that say like they like to have a beer just to relax, or they like to stretch. Does Spear Division have any unique traditions that you guys do to warm up, or do you guys just kind of wing it when you get there?
We kind of just get ourselves in the zone mostly. Sometimes we'll get a beer or something. I know we like to make sure that we're focused before we start, so it's not like we need to loosen up too much. It's mostly just making sure that we're all ready.
Yeah,
kind of mental preparation, I guess.
So when we love hearing on the show first concert stories or like first live shows that you guys played as a band. What was the first live show of Spear Division and how did that go?
Oh boy. That was about 5 years ago. July 2013, I think. I had kind of booked it myself at a venue that did shows for. It was called Indy's Jukebox at the time. Indie people may also know it as the Fifth Quarter. My previous band had played some shows there, and when Spirit Division was live ready, or so I thought we were live ready, I got a show set up there, and the support, and we were basically supporting another band that I was in. It was their debut show too, and then a couple other random bands. It was kind of a diverse bill. Like, it was all metal, but it was all different kinds, and turnout wasn't too great. Like, it was pretty sparse, but there were people that I knew there, and some friends of mine came out. Actually, we had a different drummer at the time, but the drummer that's with us now showed up.
Oh, wow.
Kind of funny.
Yeah.
But,
so, when you guys, one of the things that we love to talk about here is kind of like performing live and the thrill that musicians get out of it. It's always been described on here as like a high unlike anything other, or like any drug that you could ever take. Just knowing that you are bringing joy to these people and that they're kind of vibing off of you. What is that high like for you personally? I mean, especially being a vocalist and having the most of the attention on you. How does that feeling feel for you personally?
it's really interesting with, I know with Spirit Division, we, not only do I do vocals, but our guitarist does as well.
Oh, okay.
So there's a lot of interplay between the two of us. So we like to see how that's going to come about.
Yeah.
It's trying to get the flow of that.
Yeah.
And that's, and he's been with us for a couple of years, and we've gotten to a point where we're really confident. He's really energetic. So it's a lot of playing off each other and also playing off the audience a lot.
Oh, absolutely. So, how important to your band then is audience participation? Especially because we get a lot of guys on here that they love playing off the band. They love it when the band sings part of their song. But for your band specifically, is audience participation almost not necessarily required, but is it a very valuable part of the band's live performances?
We don't do a lot of audience participation, but it is fun when it kind of comes about. It's mostly just because we're a power trio. It's a lot of focusing on what we're playing while also getting it out there. So it's kind of hoping that our energy works. It's like, I know we did a thing last show where it was a pretty packed night, especially by our standards. We had just this break in the middle of the set where our guitarist was getting the next song ready with the lead of his. And I kind of just off the cuff just kind of did one of those clapping motions that you see, and wasn't sure how it was going to go over, but it's like, yeah, people went with it. So that's always fun.
So basically, when you guys are performing live, is there ever kind of sort of vibe that you guys like to bring to the crowd, or do they kind of bring the vibe for you? How does that work?
I think we definitely try to bring a vibe. We've been working more on our presentation lately. Stuff like the fog machine, light setup, trying to get a little more conscientious of that sort of presentation. We're not really an image-focused band, but it's more about how do we make this, palatable?
Yeah. Yeah, what struggles have you kind of gone through that, and how have you kind of overcome them? Because I know a lot of bands really struggle to find their identity and to find their live performance, what their act's going to be like. How did you guys deal with that personally?
It's mostly just kind of been we were kind of brainstorming a lot of ideas on how to improve ourselves, what things we could bring in to make the presentation better. If we needed to work on our set list, certain songs will go over great on an album, but don't always work live, and vice versa. So it's kind of been a lot of, like I said, a whole lot of trial and error.
Yeah, we get that. That's almost like every answer on the thing. It's just trial and error, and it's just finding really what works for you. But when it comes to songwriting in the band, who comes up with the majority of the lyrics? Is it you, or is it someone else in the band?
It's mostly me, but I know for our upcoming album, Forgotten Planet, it has 9 songs on it. Oh. 6 of them were my lyrics. One was our guitarist, Andy's. One was our drummer's. Actually, no, it was... Get my number straight. It's 5 that I brought in. 2 that were our drummers. 1 that was our guitarist, and then 1's an instrumental.
Oh. So when
actually got that off again. I am giving myself way too much credit here. It was actually four. It was four. That was me. Two guitarists, or yeah, four me, two guitarists, one.
Hey, they didn't say musicians were math people at all, okay? So you're fine.
I really did. But it was. We also did a cover song.
Oh, nice.
Album, so there was that one.
What cover song did you do, if you don't mind me asking?
I did a Black Sabbath song, actually, from it's a Solitude from Master of Reality.
Oh, yeah. How important to you when you guys are writing your music? Do you have similar themes, or do you like to explore a wide variety of themes in your lyrics?
It's kind of been, from what I've noticed, we kind of get to like related themes, but it kind of happens naturally. Mm-hmm. Like it's kind of one of those things that you just don't really discover until later. It's like, oh, yeah, there's a bit of a flow on this. There's a little bit of a narrative that we hadn't noticed.
Yeah. So when it comes also to writing lyrics, how do you come up with your lyrics personally? Do you use like day-to-day conversations that a lot of people sometimes say, or like stuff that you might hear on the TV, or like we've asked this 100 times almost and we've never got the right answer, but there's always that movie trope where the guy's having a dream and then he comes up with the perfect lyric in his dreams. He's like, he wakes up and goes, oh, I got to write that down. Has that ever happened to you? And if not, what main reasons or what main ways do you use to come up with your lyrics?
Oh, I don't think I've ever had that happen. I've had plenty of like the lying in bed coming up with stuff, and it's kind of one of those things of, you're probably going to be fixated on this all night, so you might as well write it down.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of, I know with me personally, it tends to start with like kind of just a single line or two, just like of a thought basically, or like a certain phrase, and kind of developing it from there, and then kind of seeing like what the structure is going to be of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So when it comes down to writing the songs and naming the songs, are you one of the people that has the name of the song already known like before you write the lyrics, or do you kind of look at the lyrics afterwards and say, hey, what can I make out of these lyrics into a good song title?
Definitely the latter. It's definitely one of those things where, like, whenever I've tried to come up with a title for something, or like write based on a title, it doesn't really work out very commonly. But, there's a lot of the time where it's, I have like 3 or 4 verses here. Let's pull a title from here. Yeah. And sometimes it comes pretty quickly, and sometimes you have to mull over it. And there have also been a couple titles where I brought in one and it got changed to a different sort of like, there's a song on the new album where I had a title for it. It got modified because actually it was our drummer had suggested a different name for it, which had stuck a little better.
Yeah. So do you also come up with the melodies too when you write the lyrics, or do you kind of just bring the lyrics to the band and say, hey, let's create like a good melody for this, and then you guys just work on it? How does that work?
It's usually whoever brings in the lyric often has the melody for it, or at least the starting one, and we check to see if it works or not. Like, I know there is a particular song on the album where I had lyrics for it, but then while we were like, I had the lyrics for it, but I couldn't like get the vocal line figured out for it. But then our drummer he's actually pretty proactive on this sort of thing. He had suggested a vocal line and brought in lyrics alongside it, and that was what we ended up using.
Oh, wow.
So it's definitely a lot of lyrics first, vocals second, I think. But you also end up modifying the lyrics to match it, I think.
Yeah. So, when you guys are writing your songs and coming up with everything, when you guys are coming up with your albums, does song placement matter to you guys, or do you guys like to just put them on just at any given order? And when you're even like coming up with the song titles and lyrics, do you kind of have an idea of like how they would bunch together in like an album, or is that one thing that you guys just worry about way down the line?
I place so much emphasis on the structure of an album and the order of everything. that was something that we've always been very meticulous about. Like, I know with this album in particular, there was so much of the, where's this song going to be? Where's this one at? And we went through so many different orders, and they're the ones that you just know are going to be the opener or the closer. Like, there are always those ones where you just know, but it turns into that matter of, oh, what's going to be right after it? What's going to be in the middle?
Yeah.
We had a song that started out like on the first listings that we had. It was sixth, but then it was third.
Oh,
and something ends up being fourth, and now it's seventh. And is this really going to be the opener? I think something else is the opener. That it's.
Do you use the same order when you're playing live, or do you like to mix it up?
We have the last time that we've only played the whole thing in its entirety once.
Oh, okay.
We're determining if we will again or not, but we played in the order that we had it at the time, which is not the order that it is now. But generally, we've kind of been mixing it up. But there are a couple songs where they do, like there are some that just flow together. Mm-hmm. Like we do have two songs right in the middle of the album where it is pretty much like they end and start on the same note. So it is very much these two are going to be played together for the rest of eternity.
Yeah. When you're coming up to and with the songs, do you ever have a certain feeling about a certain song? I think you kind of might have said it before, but I'm just verifying. Like, do you ever have a certain feeling about like a certain song where you're like, oh, this is going to be our big hit? Do you have it kind of like planned out like that, or do you just kind of like let your audience determine what your signature song is?
I would say it's probably a bit of both, but mostly just that intuition, just that feeling of it's like, yeah, we have a pretty good feeling about this one, and but at the same time, you never know how it's going to go over until somebody says like until people say like what their favorites are. That's one of my favorite parts of seeing reviews and such for our albums is figuring out like which ones people like the most. Like, not always so we can like tailor to that, but at least to be like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So, but when you're writing that song that you consider to be like the one where you're like, oh, I really hope this takes off, do you know it like as soon as you put pen to paper? Is it like maybe like after you form some of the lyrics and you look at it and you're like, holy crap, this is good? Or is it kind of like after you first rehearse it? What if in your guys' history, how's that been?
It's definitely, I think it's definitely more on the rehearsal side, but I know there have been a couple songs where it was, well, we're trying to figure out if this is going to work while we're writing it, figuring out if it's going to work while we're rehearsing it, but then it turns into we recorded it, and it's like, oh, yeah, this came together.
Yeah.
Came together, really.
And I have to ask because it's something that people are probably going to be curious about. You're performing live, you're on stage, and you're sweating with all the lights on you or whatever. How does that beard... How much more difficult does that huge beard make it performing live? Do you have to like rehydrate a little bit extra? But I just gotta say that is a very impressive beard too, by the way, to all the audience members who are viewing it. They think it's impressive too. I mean, that is a Civil War general beard right there.
Yeah, that's a new one. Appreciate it. Somehow it mostly goes unaffected. It's very light. It's not too heavy. All the sweat's everywhere else. All the hydration is if my throat gives out.
Yeah.
Or anything like that. It's pretty good.
So when it comes, is that kind of like a signature look that you were trying to get for like part of the band, or is it just one of those things where you're just like, screw it, I don't want to shave, I want to grow a beard?
Pretty much that.
Which is right on. That's what I got going right here. I've only got a couple of weeks going, but I don't know. I'm pretty lazy too. So, I mean, I'll wait till November and then I'll grow a pretty decent size one. But yeah, it's just, for me personally, it's one of those things where I just have trouble falling asleep because then my whole head just feels like it's so heated because it's just so warm. And then I get to the point where I was like, I got to shave it. But one of these days I'm going to toughen it out and try to, I mean, men like you set the standard so then other guys like me can follow. But when you're coming up with your albums, do you have the name of the album kind of set, or do you use the songs kind of to like influence it? And then also for like album covers, do you kind of have an image, or do you take it to someone and then say like, hey, what can you make for us out of the album title and the songs? How does that work?
Well, usually titles, they're usually lyric based, but it's kind of been well with our first album, it was self-titled. And it was going to be like that from the get-go, so that was pretty straightforward. Our second album is called No Rapture, which does have a title track. Actually, all of our albums have title tracks. Even on our first album, we have a song called Spirit Division. So it's like, yeah, we have the song Spirit Division by Spirit Division off the album Spirit. We haven't played that one in a good while, but it's there.
I was gonna say that's the song. If you ever get on like a talk show or something like that, you have to play that one. They're like, it's Spirit Division playing Spirit Division.
We would have to up on it. I think this line played it live maybe like twice, and that was like years ago. Our second album, No Rapture, was from a song of the same name, and that was our drummer came up with that title for a set of lyrics that we all kind of pinned together, and then it seemed like the best title to run with. Mm-hmm. So we kind of had like that idea of like the song is very apocalyptic, so it's like, well, yep, we can just get an aesthetic for that. Mm-hmm. That'll be excellent.
Yeah.
And then Forgotten Planet, the upcoming album, that one was a little interesting because I think that actually was a title first one. It's like our drummer came up with the title for that. We didn't have anything like that, so it was kind of, okay, yeah, that's a cool title. Well, we can roll with that. Can't find any other albums with that. It doesn't sound too stock. It fits us. Yeah. And then it kind of turned into, we probably should have like a title song, but this time we actually made it the instrumental. Like the album starts off with an instrumental called Forgotten Planet.
If you're gonna perform the instrumental live at shows, at what point during your show do you think you'd perform it? Kind of like maybe after a rough song where you kind of need to take a breather, or is that really determined when you do your song placement for shows?
Oh yeah, we've actually been playing that one quite a bit.
Oh, okay.
The way that we've been doing it, we place it not at the beginning of the set, but like right after. We've been like our standard opener has been the opening song off our last album, No Rapture, and it's a very slow. Like that's the first half of it's pretty slow. It's very doomy, and then it kind of picks up speed. Gradually going through. It's a bit more of an epic song.
Oh, yeah. So
and then that one closes out. Then we break out into Forgotten Planet, and it's kind of has a reverse sort of thing where it's very fast paced in the first half, but then it slows down for the second half.
Oh yeah. So one of the things that I really found out when I started this podcast was I live about 15 minutes away from Minneapolis, all the way up in Minnesota, and I didn't know that Minnesota, or Minneapolis in particular, I mean, everyone thinks about like Prince when they think about that kind of like pop music, but Minneapolis has a huge metal scene, and I was kind of wondering, you're in the Indianapolis, Indiana area, what genre really dominates the scene in Indianapolis?
Metal-wise, we're definitely a doom city.
Yeah.
It's everything that I've noticed on that ever since I moved here. There's definitely the death metal and the black metal. A lot more, there's still the metalcore and that sort of thing, and the hardcore stuff. I don't really mess with that side of it too much, but doom metal is very much the leading metal genre here.
When you were starting out, did you find it kind of a little more difficult to get shows and kind of get recognized because you weren't necessarily a doom metal band?
We kind of came into more of that. That's definitely the subgenre where we fit in the most.
Oh.
But we definitely have like that. Like doom metal, it's very blues oriented in some aspects, and very much based on grooves and that sort of thing. So we fit into that pretty easily. We're not this. I find that each band around here, even in that subgenre, does have like a quirk about them or some different way that they stand out.
Yeah.
We're all friends here.
How would you determine you guys stand out in that group?
I think of, at least talking in our scene, we're probably one of the most vocally oriented.
Oh.
Just, because we have two guys doing vocal trade-offs, and like there are some bands that do that, but it's not quite as developed as how we do it, I don't think. But then it's also, I think we also have a lot more songwriting variety.
Yeah.
I think we kind of experiment a bit more. We're a lot more diverse.
Yeah. Has Spear Division always been a trio, or did you guys have 4 members, or what's been the history there?
It's mostly been a trio. It was kind of one of those things where it started out as one, but the guitarist that I had starting out wasn't exactly confident in, just carrying it by himself. So we ended up, after a while, we got a second guitarist on, so we were a 4-piece for a bit. And this was before we even recorded our first album. So we were going on for about a little less than a year as a 4-piece. And then there was kind of a thing where both of the guitarists that we had at the time quit one after the other. And then the guitarist that we got, we recruited the guitarist who played on our first and second albums. And at the time, I remember kind of thinking like, okay, are we going to keep doing the 4-piece thing? So we had another guy that we were trying out. But by the time that the 3 of us were playing together, it kind of turned into I think we can just go ahead and just do this again. And we've been a 3-piece for about 3 years.
Do you ever kind of miss the 4-piece? Because I've had so many bands on here that like I've started out as like 3 pieces, and then they got another guy, and then they just praise how much that kind of frees you up, where you don't have to worry so much. Sometimes like the lead singer doesn't usually have to then play a instrument kind of like they do in a normal trio, or it kind of gives like added power to the band. Do you ever miss the 4-piece, or are you guys very happy with the trio that you have?
I think we're pretty content with it. There's definitely those times where I know our guitarist he's joked a couple times, like, man, I kind of wish I had somebody to hold down the rhythm while I went off and did whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, I actually have a side band where I'm just doing vocals and somebody else is playing the bass. So I kind of have that outlet myself. But for this, like, if it was just like, hey, Chris, it's time, let's see if we can bring in a bass player so you can just do vocals. Like, I kind of wouldn't really work for us because the interplay that the guitarist and I have vocally is pretty big to us. And also just, I'm far too much of a control freak when it comes to bass and such for this band in particular.
Yeah, well, that's awesome. Well, now we're going to go to our audience favorite part of the podcast, where I'm going to ask you 5 questions. We have all the results tallied from all the other podcasts, and then I think once we reach episode 50, we're going to unveil them to the audience, like the winners and who got the most picks, and then I think we'll start something else. But so for the first question, it's out of the history of music, all the songs that have ever been written, what is one song that you personally wish yourself that you'd come up with, and why?
Probably, if only just, I would probably actually have to say Electric Funeral by Black Sabbath. Like, I don't know if that's like, I wouldn't call it like my favorite or anything, but it's that one where I probably spent a lot of my adolescence trying to write it.
Yeah.
Where that's kind of been one of those ones where this one probably reflects a lot of my writing style, and it probably shaped a lot of aspects of it.
Well, I mean, Black Sabbath, I mean, you just talk about influential bands. I mean, they're in the top 10, obviously, just of all time. I mean, their music inspires me so much. I listen to at least one Black Sabbath song probably like every day. And it's just, it's so mainstream that it's not ridiculous, but I mean, they're just so ingrained in pop culture when it comes to music. I mean, Ozzy, I was blessed, actually, fun fact, I think we might have talked about this already on the podcast, but I was blessed when Ozzy did his disastrous Take Me Out to the Ball Game at Wrigley Field. I was there.
I am so sorry.
I was like 8 years old, so even 8 years old, I was like, holy shit, what is he doing? Like, I was like, he's screwing this up. Everyone there was like, can you believe what he just, and like, it was obvious he was drunk or high out of his mind, but it's one of those memories, and we were just on vacation in Chicago, and it happened to be the one game out of the year that we went to Wrigley Field. The one time I've only been to Wrigley Field is Ozzy Osbourne's Take Me Out to the Ball Game, and that's something that I'll take with me to the day I die. But it was that we had no idea that he was going to do that before the game. We had no idea, but it was just, it's one of those moments where you're lucky that you're there. But I mean, Jesus, Ozzy, it's like, come on. But
I have to look this up, but I kind of am glad I've never heard it because that just sounds painful.
You're you need to look it up after this. It made like ESPN like stories for like one of the top 10 most embarrassing things in sports history or whatever. He's like, take me out, ball. He's like seriously drunk, like he's out of his mind, like, and it's so funny. But yeah, I recommend to everyone, to Chris and to everyone listening, look it up after you finish watching this podcast. It's one of those things where you need to see it before you die, just so you can be like, oh, Ozzy. All right, so for number 2 though. Out of all of the bands and artists, dead or alive, doesn't matter, you can choose either one. If you could perform one live show with any band or artist, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
Performing with us in like with them on stage at that time? That's a hard one. That just plays into so much of that. Not sure if I'm worthy of that.
We'll make you worthy for this.
Probably have to say Iron Maiden. I mean, Iron Maiden's my favorite band, so it's...
I'm not going to lie, the guy that we just had on earlier today, Iron Maiden, was his Run to the Hills was the song that he chose, and then Iron Maiden was the band that he chose to perform live with, and I got to say, Iron Maiden, absolutely. We had a whole two-minute spiel where we just talked about how underrated Iron Maiden is in the heavy metal. I mean, heavy metal guys obviously know who they are and they appreciate them, but like the general population doesn't get them as much as they should. I mean, Run to the Hills and Number of the Beast are two of my favorite songs of all time. And The Trooper, obviously, that's up there too. I mean, that's just, if you want to, whenever I work out, I listen to basically just Iron Maiden's one album that I enjoy. Just listen to the whole thing, and it can last the whole workout. And it's just, they're a perfect band. I love their speed, their intensity. A guy with me with ADD, I mean, that is just so appealing to me, and it's so appealing to a lot of people. But I just really enjoyed it. So for our third question, out of all the venues on the planet, if you could perform at anyone, where would you go and why? And I have to add a disclaimer, you cannot say Red Rocks because Red Rocks has already won this. It's gotten 8 votes or 9 votes now out of like the first 20 times I asked it, so then I just disqualified Red Rocks because it's obviously going to win. But other than Red Rocks, if you could perform anywhere in the country or in the world for one show, where would it be and why?
I don't know if I would say mine's a venue, but one that I've always wanted to do was actually set up a stage at Loch Ness.
Oh, yeah.
Play a set. I would just...
Have Nessie come out?
Yeah, even like have a climactic cover of Judas Priest's Loch Ness.
Oh, yeah.
Just because.
Oh, that would be unbelievable, yeah. I am surprised, though, with all that local publicity that they get for the Loch Ness, but I'm surprised that they haven't had like a show there ever before.
Maybe they have, it's just not...
Yeah.
I don't know.
They could have like the next Woodstock there or something like that. Just have it be like there was a concert up in Lake Minnetonka, which is probably a famous lake just from like Purple Rain Prince. But they had Tim McGraw come on and perform on the lake with like all these boats that connect into like a stage. Do that on Loch Ness. That would be the coolest thing ever.
Yeah, or even just on the banks of it.
Yeah, that too. Well, yeah, that too. Obviously,
I can see it.
Yeah. All right, so now we get to the real nitty-gritty. This is the real moment of truth here. Guilty pleasure song. What is a guilty pleasure song that you enjoy that people in your band or most people that you know would never guess that you enjoy?
I don't know. I tend to be pretty public about my guilty pleasure.
Oh, okay.
So.
Doesn't matter, but yeah.
Probably...
No Nickelback, by the way.
Nickelback's not even like... just bad.
I'm done with the podcast if anyone ever says a Nickelback song for their guilty pleasure or a band that they want to perform with.
You've invoked it.
Yeah.
I'll actually go on a limb here. I'll say Taylor Swift's Blank Space.
Oh, yeah.
Only because that's one of those ones where it's... I think I've dated that girl. A couple times.
Believe it or not, that is the second time someone said Taylor Swift's Blank Space on the 36 times that we've asked that question. So I guess it's popular. I think that's taken over but I will still say I say this every time. The number one overall still is. We had a death metal guy come on and say that his favorite song or guilty pleasure was "I Want It That Way," and that's you can't get any better than that when it comes to guilt. And then another guy said Bop, and that's a close second. But
it's a bad rap.
Yeah.
Hanson had integrity.
And plus, I was like the perfect age growing up where I was like super young. Where like I still believe that urban legend that they were all girls. Like, remember that urban legend where everyone thought that they were like girls, and then they're like, no, they're just like guys that they're just girls that dress up as guys. There was that whole urban legend. Like, everyone in our neighborhood would just like tell that rumor, and then everyone would be like, no, they're guys. And then there's like a whole big debate in school. But yeah, Hanson definitely. People forget. Everyone just remembers Umbop, but people forget all the other good music that they made.
Like, I've never listened to anything else that they've done, but it's one of those things. I mean, they're still going. They have integrity. They have, like, they're kind of doing their own thing. Good for them.
Yeah. Now, lastly, guilty pleasure genre.
Actually, before I got into metal, my big thing was disco.
Whoa.
Yeah, not even kidding. Like, 7th grade.
We have a shocker here, folks.
The Saturday Night Fever soundtrack was my jam.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
I'll still love it.
Oh, yeah. I love that. I mean, all that Saturday Night Fever stuff, Staying Alive. I mean, Disco Inferno, obviously. That was my aunt's favorite song, so whenever she'd come over, she'd blast that, so I had to listen to that about 150 times. But yeah, anything Bee Gees, I mean, that's some good stuff. And I mean, it's definitely stuff that I won't be blasting in my car when I'm driving down the freeway. I might have my windows closed, but it's definitely super enjoyable stuff. And I wish they would kind of give it an update just for fun, just like an update of like the 21st century version of disco, which they really haven't.
It's like one that I kind of think is almost there.
Yeah.
It might be an interesting opinion. Actually, I think some of Ghost's stuff can actually could be described as like disco metal. So, like, especially off the new album. Like, I don't know if you had a chance to listen to the song Dance Macabre.
Oh, I definitely have to give it a listen to, yeah.
But it's one of those ones where it's, okay, I think this is basically just like disco Eurodance with heavy guitars on it.
What's it called? Dance Macabre? I'll write it down right now. Is it Dance Macabre?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. I'm just writing that down right now.
Yeah, it's if you just type in Ghost, you can probably find it.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, I'll definitely give that a listen to after, because, I mean, that does sound interesting. I really think it would be interesting to see kind of what that sounds like nowadays. I mean, I think disco really took even when you have a band like Kiss who ends up writing a disco song in the 70s, that just shows how big that genre was. But unfortunately, it died out in the early 80s. But so why don't you tell us a little bit about where people can find your music? I mean, do you have iTunes, Spotify? If people were looking for your music, where could they find it?
Definitely. Our biggest one, if you wanted to purchase it from us directly, we do have our stuff on sale on Bandcamp.
Oh.
Just spiritdivision.bandcamp.com. Got all our albums on there. We do have our first 2 albums are on Spotify. When Forgotten Planet comes out, that'll be on Spotify. They should all be on iTunes, Google Play, etc. Yeah, pretty standard.
All right, yeah, we'll definitely leave a link down below for everyone to go and check that out. I mean, and so you said August 31st is when your album is planned to be coming out, your new one?
Yep, absolutely. We're taking pre-orders for that right now.
All right, yeah. I'll definitely leave a link for that too, and I'll give shout-outs as we get closer to August 31st that your new album's coming out. And do you guys have any shows upcoming in the Indianapolis area? Because I have interviewed someone from Indiana before, so I know I have at least a few fans from there.
Yeah. Well, we have 2 shows coming up right now. Hopefully one of them could very well be confirmed after this interview, actually. Our next upcoming show will be August 25th down in Louisville, actually. Going down there for the first time. We are thinking we're going to be setting up, we're planning a show here in Indy for, CD release show. I get the details on that announced hopefully soon.
All right.
After that, our next show in Indy will be September 29th.
Oh, okay. September 29th. Okay, I'll leave a reminder down below 2 of those dates. And yeah, basically, I mean, it was great having you on. I really enjoyed talking to you about stuff. I mean, we talked about disco for just a little bit, and I really enjoyed that. I haven't talked about disco on this podcast yet, so you get something new, everything. And obviously, the greatness of your beard is another thing that I think we will remember you mostly by. But I mean, here's how this works. You have anything that you need me to promote, you just message me on Facebook. don't even have to ask. I will talk about it on here. I mean, I'm obviously going to promote your album August 31st. I'll be talking about it all the way, basically a week ahead of time I'll be talking about it. And I'll leave links below, obviously, for everyone. And then if you have upcoming shows at all for any time in the future, you just message me on Facebook. I'll post it to the audience. I mean, I enjoy doing this. I enjoy helping out other musicians out. I mean, that's why I started this whole thing in the first place. And yeah, man, I really appreciate you being on. It was great having you, and we wish you nothing but the best. And again, you guys, it's Spear Division. Definitely go and check these guys out in the links down below. And Chris, do you have anything to say before we wrap her up here?
I think that'll do it. Thank you for your time. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
Thanks to everybody for their support as well. It's very much appreciated.
Absolutely. I mean, we enjoy having this. We enjoy doing this, and I mean, we love hearing new music. It's a passion of mine just to kind of like find out about these new bands that I normally would have never found out for. But and once again, lastly, we have Spear Division. Go and give these guys a check out. And we have Dee Dee on the spot, Ryan Johnson signing out. Have a great night, everyone.